I'm happy to welcome you to my channel. I hope this story brings you something special and leaves a pleasant impression deep inside you. When the roof leaked in the house on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon, Ava went up to the attic for the first time in a long while. She was 25, unmarried, but with a stable, well-paid job as a project manager at a tech company. She had enough money. Her schedule allowed both morning coffee on Alberta Street and spontaneous weekend trips to the ocean. Everything was in its place, until behind a box of Christmas lights, she saw a thin gray-beige envelope, yellowed along the edges, with uneven handwriting. "Open when you're ready. Your mom." She turned it in her hands for a long time, feeling the sticky thread of tape with her fingers, and for a moment imagined that inside were old photographs. But when she opened it, she found 2 certificates with stamps and a short note. "Ava, we have long wanted to tell you. You are our daughter, not by blood, but dearer than anything in the world. Forgive us for lacking the courage to tell you earlier." Signed, Linda and Mark. Her heart struck at her temples. The second certificate was about adoption. The first was a copy of a birth record from another state, Ohio. Ava sat right down on the floor, leaned her back against a chest, and stared at the stamps for a long time, as if a simple headline might appear there. How to live on. She did not feel anger. Pain, yes. Bitter bewilderment, too. Linda and Mark had taught her not to lie, to keep her word, and not to delay in doing good. And at the same time, they had kept this, the main thing, in secret. Why? The question cut her forehead like a thin ruler. That night, Ava did not sleep. She sifted through small things from the past in her mind. Why in childhood did she have a different blood type? Why? When asked about the maternity hospital, did her mother answer, "That's a long story." She typed a message. "Mom? Dad? I found the envelope. I'm not angry. Let's talk." And she didn't send it. First, the facts. Morning greeted her with coffee and a decision. The copy of the certificate listed the city of birth, Cleveland, Ohio. Ava went to the Department of Health website, called the Bureau of Vital Statistics, then the Archives Department at the oldest city hospital. The voice of the woman on the other end, dry and tired, explained, "The archive for that year is on paper. We need a request, a copy of your ID, and you to come in person." She put "personal business trip" in her work calendar, bought a ticket to Cleveland. The Portland rain dragged on like a gray ribbon, and Ava was glad of it. Rain hides strangers' looks and one's own doubts well. American bus stations smell the same, of wet cardboard and unfinished coffee. She stepped under the canopy and inhaled. "Taxi?" a hoarse voice called from the side. The driver, in a dark blue jacket with wrinkles beside his eyes that glowed with warmth like dimmed light bulbs. There was something strangely familiar in this taxi. The turn of the intonation, the pause before the eye. Ava waved off the feeling. "To the city hospital, please." On the way, they were silent. The driver quietly hummed, "You Are My Sunshine," a simple melody, like ripples on water. Ava thought she had heard it a very long time ago, and immediately felt ashamed of the thought. It was too childish. The archive received her humanely and officially. Ms. Alvarez with glasses on a chain, tea in a paper cup, and the wording, "Please give us a little time." Ava signed the requests and honestly told the story, from the envelope in the attic to the stamps. Ms. Alvarez nodded gently. Stories like this sometimes happen. Sometimes they end well. An hour later, she returned with a thick, dark ledger. "Here's the vital record. Number, date. Pay attention to the note. Temporarily transferred to neonatal ICU." There is the on-duty midwife's signature. And one more stamp. There's a correction here. First, one surname was entered. Then it was crossed out and another written in. That happened when infants were transferred between departments. A pinch tightened in Ava's chest. Corrections. Crossings out. As if someone had rubbed out a piece of her life with an eraser and drawn another in. We can pull the cards from neonatal, but that will take a day or two. We have a phone number for a former nurse, Stephanie Carter. She's already retired, but her memory is like a safe. Ava thanked her, left her number, and already on her way out, caught herself dialing Mom. She erased it. First, the facts. She stepped out of the building and looked at the white sky. Taxi? The same voice again. The same driver, as if he had been waiting on purpose. You again? Want a lift downtown? To 14 Pine Street, she said automatically. According to old address books, people with the surname that had been crossed out and written in again might have lived there. Oh, that's not far from me, he replied. They drove along narrow streets where the maples touched the roofs. The driver hummed again, and Ava finally asked, "What's that melody?" My mother sang it, and then I sang it to my daughter when she was little. He smiled in the mirror. Ava's heart took a step in an unknown direction. In front of the house with dark green doors, the driver braked. Farther is easier on foot, he said, and something flashed in his voice that Ava didn't catch in time. Thank you, she nodded. A woman with clear, tired eyes opened to the bell. Helen, she introduced herself. My name is Ava. I'm looking for information about... The words scattered like buttons. Come in, she said simply. You look very much like a little girl I once held in my arms. The kitchen smelled of apple pie. Helen poured tea and stitched calm with every movement. Back then I thought my child had died, she said. Premature. 2 weeks of struggle. And then they said her heart couldn't take it. My husband Jack has been going to the bus station every morning since. He said that if someone ever arrived, he had to be there. Ava listened, and the words struck her in waves. The driver, the station, mornings, waiting. The door creaked, and a man in a dark blue jacket appeared on the threshold. The same one. He froze, like someone who suddenly saw a sail on the step. Jack, this is Ava, Helen said softly. He took off his cap. Good afternoon, he said quietly. We seem to know each other, Ava said. And they both smiled new smiles, the kind that appear when the world swaps nameplates. The archive confirmed everything the next day. Nurse Stephanie Carter, thin and sharp-shouldered, sat over the cards for a long time. That night, 2 newborns were brought in. One premature, the other healthy but jaundiced. You were put in an incubator, the other was under observation. In the morning, the bracelets were mixed up. When the premature baby, unfortunately, did not survive, the administration reported that it was your child. The healthy one was handed over to other parents. When inconsistencies were discovered, they refused. The child was transferred into the adoption system. That's how you came to Linda and Mark. Your birth parents believed for many years that they had lost you. They wrote, they searched, but the system back then was like a forest. Ava listened and did not forgive that forest, but she did not hate it either. Anger didn't work here. I'm not angry, she said. I just want everyone to finally breathe the truth. Helen cried without shame. Softly, warmly. Jack sat silent, his palms clenched as if he had just held a steering wheel on black ice. I saw you in the car and thought, it doesn't matter, he said. What matters is that you're here. Helen and Jack's neighbor, Nathan, appeared like a smiling punctuation mark. Tall, sun-browned, with an unhurried smile that gives you time to get used to it. He brought Helen lemon pie, fixed the fence, and in winter shoveled a path. When Ava was leaving the building, he was just installing a new doorbell. "So the melody will be nicer," he explained, touching the contacts with a screwdriver. "Do you like it?" "I like it when something doesn't scare me." Then, like this. They talked about little things, about the cafe on the corner where they serve the best cinnamon rolls, about buses that never arrive on time, about how the feeling of someone else's home can be soothing. Nathan suddenly said, "You look like Helen, but you smile like Jack." Ava laughed. "And I also smile like Linda, and I'm stubborn like Mark." She saw how Nathan listened attentively, without haste. The way you listen to a person who is finally naming out loud her bright and shadowed sides. Back in Portland, Ava went to Linda and Mark. They had been waiting for her, as if checking the door every 5 minutes. On the table were her favorite pasta and a New York-style cheesecake. Her mother squeezed a kitchen towel. "We were afraid we'd lose you if we told the truth," Linda whispered. "That you'd go look for a real family, and we would become a statistic." "You are my family," Ava answered. "And they are too. I don't have to choose. I have enough heart for everyone." She put the envelope on the table. "I'm only sorry I grew up without the truth. But now, let's straighten it out." Linda burst into tears and hugged her daughter. Mark nodded. "We'll get to know them. And that Nathan, too," he added, smiling boyishly. They set the weekend in Cleveland. Jack was as nervous as before a first day at work. He checked the table and laid the napkins straight, like rails. Helen baked apple pies. The kitchen steamed with vanilla. At 4 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Ava came in first, followed by Linda and Mark with a basket of pears and shy smiles. The two mothers looked into each other's eyes for a long time, as if looking at an ocean from different shores and finally seeing a bridge. Then they simply hugged without word matches. Jack and Mark shook hands. "Fishing?" Mark asked. "Mostly bus station," Jack joked, then laughed at himself. "But we can go fishing." Nathan brought his signature mint lemonade. In his presence, the air became calmer. He unobtrusively held the space, offering a shoulder where pauses grew longer. They talked about everything and nothing. Childhood photos, first steps, the music teacher, and about Nurse Stephanie, for whom they all decided to buy a theater ticket and set flowers on her windowsill. "Life sometimes makes mistakes," Nathan said, "but people can correct it gently." The hardest part remained, the kind of thing you can't sign in any office. Ava had to decide to stay in the Portland rhythm with work and familiar roots, close to Linda and Mark, or to move closer to Helen and Jack, on whose neighboring street lived Nathan, who was becoming something more than a kind neighbor. She thought about it at night, staring at the dark ceiling. The choice looked like cutting a map into 2 parts and tying them in a knot, and such a knot doesn't always hold. "I don't want to leave anyone," she told herself. "And I don't want to lose myself." She did what she did best. She made a plan. On Monday, a talk with her manager about a full switch to remote. The project allowed it. On Tuesday, they signed an addendum. On Wednesday, she rented a small studio in Cleveland for 3 months, a pilot period. On Thursday, she bought plane tickets Portland-Cleveland for every other weekend and blocked out in her calendar rotation by hearts. When she told both families, the mothers simultaneously began to object, each from her side, and the fathers snorted in the same way. But Ava laid her palms on the table. "I'm an adult. I want to try it this way, because choice isn't about rejection. It's about the shape of love we can carry." Nathan was silent, and then added, I'll be waiting on the platform every Friday, and I'll see you off on Sunday, until you decide where it's easier to breathe. And even if it's not with me, I'll still wait. Because I love waiting for the people I love. Weeks with 2 rhythms began. In Portland, morning coffee with Linda, Mark's quiet humor, Zoom meetings and releases. In Cleveland, first shared breakfast with Helen and Jack, stories about the grandmother who sang "You Are My Sunshine." Walks with Nathan down cobbled streets where voices bounce off bricks softly, like a wave off the shore. She learned to be a daughter in both homes, to bake apple pie like ours and like theirs, to sing carols she remembered, and those she had never heard. She laughed when Mark and Jack competed to see who would light the grill faster. She cried in secret when she saw Linda and Helen exchanging recipes and doctor's numbers, learning to be mothers beside each other. Nathan brought Ava small finds, a black and white photo of 1990s Cleveland, time tea from the farmer's market, a playlist with songs from her childhood. "It's like you're packing the world into little boxes," Ava said. "I like it when the important things are at hand, so they don't get lost," he answered. Her work went even better. Her manager noted that remote only increased her productivity. Ava did one more thing. With a lawyer, she filed requests to officially clarify the archival discrepancies so that the records would contain the truth, without devaluing the adoption. At a meeting with the clerk at the county clerk's office, she smiled. "I'm Ava, daughter of Linda and Mark, and daughter of Helen and Jack." The clerk looked up and smiled too. "Sounds right." They held a small celebration for Nurse Stephanie. Flowers, a theater ticket, a cake. She was flustered, but her eyes shone. How good that I lived to see a story become honest. One evening, Ava sat with Nathan on a bench by the Cuyahoga River. Streetlights drew narrow paths on the water, and the city breathed calmly. "I thought choice was suffering," she said. "It turns out it's architecture. You build little bridges, and suddenly you walk them with confidence." "Architecture is a good word," Nathan said softly, "especially when it's about the heart." Half a year later, Ava realized that Cleveland had become not just an address. It had become gravity. She took another step. She moved her primary residence there, and in Portland left a room, not just in case, but as an homage to the city and the people who were her first. She called Linda and Mark. "I've moved closer to Helen and Jack, but every other weekend, I'm with you. And all the big holidays together. Deal?" "Deal," answered in one voice the 2 people who had taught her to love without conditions. Helen fixed a magnet on the fridge. "Home is where someone keeps the light on for you." Jack stopped going to the bus station every day. Now the 3 of them went there once a week with Nathan, just to sit, watch arrivals and departures, and listen to announcements that once sounded like prayers of waiting. On a Sunday morning, Ava woke to rain. Nathan stood by the window with 2 cups of coffee. "Listen," he said. They stood listening to the rain touching the metal drip edges and the leaves of the old apple tree. "Your favorite orchestra," she smiled. "Mine is you," he replied without grandstanding and without a shadow of doubt. Ava took that same envelope from the shelf. She put it in a frame and hung it over her desk. "Not to remember painfully," she explained, "but so as not to forget how well it feels to breathe truth." In the evening, all 5 gathered: Linda and Mark, Helen and Jack, and Nathan. They laughed at Mark's quips, argued about whether a bay leaf belongs in Chile, and sang along to "You Are My Sunshine," now together. Ava finally said aloud what she had long carried within herself. "Some stories begin with a mistake, but they end with a choice. I didn't choose between you. I chose all of you, and myself in that choice. When the rain outside fell silent, each of them saw in the quiet their own vision. Linda, a girl with braids running through a yard in Portland. Helen, a new summer in which her lullaby sounded not like a memory, but like the present. Mark and Jack, the road to a fishing trip where it no longer mattered who lit the fire faster. Nathan, two cities joined by one voice that says, "I'm here." Ava smiled and thought that a happy ending is really a happy beginning. She had 2 addresses of the heart and both were open. And every morning, when she put the kettle on, the world quietly tuned itself to the right tone, to the tone of truth that no longer hides in envelopes in the attic.